Welcome to everyone. It looks like we've already got 126 people online, so and that's at the start of the hour. So it looks like though everyone is super busy, you've made time to attend this webinar, which is very good. In terms of the agenda, we've got today. Looks like we're getting some feedback coming in from somewhere. Delighted to introduce to you two new speakers from our webinar, Jackie Turner from Turner Corner Learning Solutions and Dan Christmas from Sabio. So Jackie, you run a coaching consultancy. Would you like to share a little bit of your background?
Yes, certainly. My background is very much in contact centres, so I worked in contact centre environment for 30 years. I've worked for some very large organisations, Lloyds, HSBC and Tesco, to name a few. And more recently, I've set up my own training and coaching business, and I specialise in the two key areas I'm most passionate about in the workplace, which is customer service and coaching, and the two very much go hand in hand together. So I'm really excited to be a guest speaker today.
Excellent. And we're also joined by Dan Christmas from Sabio. Dan, if people aren't familiar with Sabio, would you like to give us a little pen portrait and also your role within the organization?
Okay, so Sabio is a systems integrator, but we really have a really strong passion that we believe that customer experience should be excellent, and we look at technology and how we can help people along their digital journeys to achieve that. Within Sabio, I'm head of customer training. My particular area of interest is performance management and quality monitoring, and I work in and around contact centres and have over 22 years experience of doing so.
So a lot of experience we've got, and quite a wide agenda looking at the human side and also the technology side of how we can get more time and coach our staff. So just a reminder that, sorry, where are we? No, here we are. And just a reminder that replay is going to be available later on today, callcenterhelp.com/recorded webinars. If you'd like to log into the chat room, here's the address here, callcenterhelper.com/chat. And once you're in the chat room, there is an added advantage that you can download the webinar slides. We are going to be going through a lot of details, so it's going to be very useful to do that. Also, once you're in the chat room, if you'd like to leave a tip or any questions, if you'd like to use hashtag tip for tip, and there is an added advantage. We have this rather nice bottle of champagne here. It's a sort of tin champagne, and that will go out to the winning tip, which we'll select by the end of the webinar. If you prefer a box of chocolates or an Amazon voucher, we can also ship that out to you depending on where you are or your preference. So if you'd like to log into the chat room, and we're asking the question in 1 or 2 words, how much coaching is there in your contact center? A lot of the feedback we've been getting so far seems to be nowhere near enough. Stephanie, for instance, says not enough. Each advisor should have 1 hour of coaching per week, which could be flexible over the month, but unfortunately she doesn't see that happening. She would hope that managers should spend about 4 to 5 hours a day coaching, but that doesn't seem to be achieved. So I know that Jackie has got some tips for you on that. We're going to kick off now with a poll question, and I think everyone's super busy, and one of the reasons we're often super busy is email. So I'd like to ask the question of everyone: how long do your team leaders spend on email per day? Is it less than an hour? Is it 1 to 2 hours? Is it more than 2 hours? Do you not know, or have you never asked? So if you'd just like to fill in the details on that, I think this is going to be very interesting. So less than an hour, 1 to 2 hours, 2 hours plus, don't know, haven't asked. Jackie, have you got an idea of what you think the most common answer is going to be?
At least 2 hours, I would say.
Well, let's have a look at the results. This is a sample size of 145. And if you just share the results on the screen. Jackie, you're absolutely spot on. 62% of the audience spend 2 hours plus on email. So I guess that's at least 2 hours that could be potentially spent on coaching. It's certainly one of the things I see. A lot of team leaders sort of get this email coming in and think that's one of the key parts of what they're doing. So yeah, I think that's absolutely fascinating. Dan, any surprises there?
No, I think that I would expect the same, about 2 hours.
So I think now is probably a good chance to, Jackie, pass the baton across to you, and you can share some of the ideas of how we can all be spending less time on email and more time on coaching. So I've just
okay. Yeah, happy to, John T. There we go. So I guess to start this part of the webinar, it's really about looking at the reasons for not coaching within your organization. Coaching is very much about identifying root causes, and once those root causes are identified, then find an effective solution. So it's really important either for yourself or for the managers within your organization to really understand the root cause so that they can then work towards making some changes that are going to be effective. So the first thing to look at is your own mindset and the mindset of your managers. Is coaching actually seen as a priority in individuals at the moment? And I think it's important to think about on a daily and a weekly basis, there are tasks that you do prioritize, that somehow you manage to fit those in without fail and they get completed. And I guess the first thing to think of is if you can do that for some tasks, what's the difference currently between those tasks and coaching? Lack of confidence can also be a potential root cause. If we don't feel confident at something, and that could be because we haven't been trained in a particular skill, such as coaching, then it's a human sort of reaction, really, a natural human reaction to put things off because we just don't feel we have the skills and the ability. The third thing to look at within your organization is, are you, as an individual yourself, not prioritizing coaching at the moment because it's not seen as having a coaching culture within the organization? And what I mean by that is coaching a priority from the top down? Is it led by your senior managers? Are they leading by example? But also, a coaching culture is very much about ensuring that coaching is for everyone. What I've sometimes seen in organizations is that it's the underperformers, the people that are not achieving their targets, that actually receive the coaching. Whereas coaching is such an effective skill to have with people that are doing a good job but want to stretch themselves even further. So it's important to have a coaching culture where everybody receives coaching. Of course, we will look at your own personal effectiveness, so your time management skills. So are you prioritizing the right things at the moment? But also, finally, looking at, are you recognizing and are your managers recognizing opportunities to coach within your organization? So when you're thinking about coaching, are you just thinking about that formal sit-down, one-to-one discussion around performance that you have with your staff, and you're not currently looking beyond those opportunities to coach? So I guess it's just for you to consider, can you relate to any of those potential reasons currently for yourself or for your organisation as to why coaching isn't happening on a regular basis or as much as you think it should? And perhaps you'd like to share some of your thoughts in the chat room, and we'll have a look at those a little bit later. So if coaching isn't seen as a priority for you or for your managers at the moment, is it because there's a lack of understanding of the benefits of coaching? There's been many studies completed over the years and linking the coaching in terms of a link to an increase in work performance, so delivering a better customer service, improving communication skills. And a key one for me is how much coaching can improve productivity far more than just training alone. So there was a study by the International Personnel Management Association which showed that training typically increased productivity by 22%, but combine that with coaching and there's a massive increase to 88%. So if in your organisation at the moment you're sending your staff on training courses and you're not embedding that training through follow-up coaching support, then there's a great missed opportunity. Some additional benefits, very much for yourself as team leaders or managers, is if you're finding yourself falling into that trap of going into tell mode, giving the answers every time a member of your team asks for some advice. What usually happens is people then become reliant on you as their manager. They know that they can come to you and you will give them the answers. So it's really important to focus on long-term benefits with coaching. If you spend that extra time asking a few simple questions to really help the individuals to identify their own solutions, then in time they will become less reliant and less dependent on you. Also, in turn, they will become more creative and start to problem solve. So they will develop their problem solving and their decision making ability. And rather than coming to you with problems, they will be coming to you with potential solutions, which in turn increases employee engagement because they feel valued for their decision making ability and for their knowledge and skills. And that in turn can improve staff retention within your organisation. So they are just some examples of some great benefits of utilising coaching within your business. And again, I'd be interested to hear your views in terms of what benefits you've potentially seen yourself in your organisation, for yourself as a team leader or manager, for your team, and certainly for your organisation. Are there any thoughts coming through already, John, into the chat room?
Yeah, we've got a number of different opinions coming through. Andy says we run a coaching slot system for 10 hours of the day, but we find we have to pull this quote often when it gets super busy, unless of course the operator is underperforming or on probation. So I guess it ties in with what you were saying about it's the underperformers that seem to be getting the coaching rather than the performers. And Jeffrey says we have mentors who work with any team member having issues or with scores or with quality assurance. I spend at least a third of my work week coaching. We do ongoing learning, ongoing training. We have to give our agents the skills and the tools they need to succeed, which I think is really ties in with the benefits you were saying.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay. So moving on, looking at personal effectiveness. So how effective are you or your team of managers and team leaders currently with managing their workload? I'm sure you're all familiar with the time management matrix, and ideally, of course, we should be working mainly in quadrant 2 on those things that are important, those tasks that are really going to help work towards the company's mission and goals. And that's your preparation and your planning. But what often takes us away from quadrant 2 are certainly the quadrant 1 task, which are the pressing problems, the things that we've left until last minute. And that can very often be that we've put things off. So they've become urgent simply because we haven't done them when we should, or we haven't planned for them. Also, where we can spend a great deal of our time is in quadrant 3, working on those things that are urgent but not important. Those interruptions, emails very often fall into this category. Meetings can sometimes fall into this category. But also the manager themselves can be really contributing to this because they like to take control. They feel as a manager that they have to be the one that's doing all the firefighting, the problem solving, and perhaps not currently delegating enough responsibilities to members of the team. So just looking at some quick tips, and I'm sure you're going to share some of yours a little bit later. It's about planning and regaining control of your calendar. So are your team leaders and managers currently really taking the time to book in planning on a weekly, on a monthly basis, and planning in those tasks that are going to be focused on achieving the company's long-term missions and goals? And coaching is very much one of those tasks that should be planned in and scheduled as a priority within the calendar. Another useful area to look at, and this is where I've seen this work very well in a particular organisation I worked in, as part of training team leaders and managers on coaching skills, we actually looked at, within the sessions, potential barriers to coaching. So we collated all that information, we engaged with the team leaders, engaged with the managers, and yes, of course, there were some excuses, but there were also some common themes that came out of that, which was then fed up to the senior managers in the business. And there were simple things that could be changed, such as too many reports. So team leaders spending too much time analysing reports where there was a lot of duplication, too much documentation. And I'll mention that again a little bit later. Does every coaching conversation have to be documented? But if so, who should be documenting that conversation? Is it just the managers? Because that's time consuming. Another area they looked at was team sizes, and they were able to actually look across the whole contact centre and actually reduce some of the team sizes. Some team leaders were managing large sizes, large groups, and that makes it quite difficult to then fit in enough time with everybody within that team to coach. So it's really about engaging your team leaders and managers, finding out what the barriers are, and then finding solutions for them. Emails is an interesting one, particularly as the majority of people said they spend over 2 hours on emails. An interesting statistic here, a case study showed that a 33% reduction in time spent on email could potentially provide 20 additional days on coaching. Some simple tips here: turn off your email pop-up that comes up on the bottom of the screen, which tells you an email has arrived, because there's too much temptation to read it and then action it. Emails should be prioritised in the same way as any other task. Some will be urgent and important, but many won't be. So it's important to manage emails in the same way as other tasks, but also schedule in specific times during the day to check your emails. Too many team leaders and managers I've seen are tempted to read those emails and action them as soon as they come in. So allocate time, specific time where you check your emails. And I always say to people, if something is really urgent, that person will come and have a conversation with you, or at least pick up the phone. And of course, it's important to delegate. So if you are somebody at the moment that is, that likes to take control, look for opportunities where you can delegate to your team leaders and to your staff. But I do mean delegation, not dumping. I'm sure we've all been on the receiving end of somebody saying to us, this is a great development opportunity for you, but actually you were just giving it to them because you didn't want to do it yourself. So don't fall into that trap.
I've visited one contact centre where they had the problem with email. The team leaders got promoted, and then they thought that responding quickly to email was one of their key things. Weren't doing enough coaching. So what they did is they actually turned off the team leaders' email between 10 o'clock and 3 o'clock. So that there was, I don't know if I can't remember if there was both inbound or outbound. Certainly they turned off the inbound emails. So they didn't have that distraction between 10 o'clock and 3 o'clock. Between 3 and 5, that gave enough time to catch up on anything that happened, anything urgent at the start of the day, and if something came in the middle, someone came and found them. And they saw a massive increase in coaching and a massive increase in performance as a result.
Yeah, I've certainly seen that myself, even going as far as non-email days as well, so that they didn't actually deal with any emails during the day, which then encouraged people to go and speak to each other, which sometimes, we can overuse email, I think, so sometimes it's an easy option. So it's important to create breathing space in the workplace for people to start looking at potential issues and barriers and problems, and to start problem solving, but making sure that you're planning in time for regular team meetings so that people have that opportunity to voice their ideas and solutions. But also sharing best practices as well. Looking at what, if your call centre is a large centre with different operational departments, are they currently having the opportunity to get together and share best practices with each other? I've certainly seen the benefit of that, where in one department there was a lot of coaching, in another there wasn't, and then they got together to actually see what they could share between them. So visiting other contact centres as well can be useful for this. Coaching opportunities. So when you at the moment think about coaching and saying that perhaps you're not doing enough coaching within the organisation, what do you actually mean by that? So yes, there's the planned coaching, the one-to-ones, the performance reviews, but coaching can be useful with any conversation where perhaps somebody is coming to ask for advice, whether that's a team leader or a call centre agent, and rather than giving them the quick solution, asking a few simple questions to get them thinking for themselves. That is coaching. I've also seen in an organisation where they actually moved away from just a focus on the weekly one-to-one coaching discussions and moved more towards everyday short conversations, and that can be equally as effective. So when you're looking at coaching in your organisation, are you just focusing on the planned coaching, the formal coaching, or actually there's an opportunity here to expand this in terms of everyday conversations, short conversations that are coaching opportunities, as well as team meetings and absence reviews. So lots of opportunities to coach, whether that's one-to-one coaching or coaching your teams. There is I strongly believe a place for still having the formal coaching sessions as well as the short everyday conversations, and it can be useful to use a structured model. I particularly like the OSCAR coaching model, which stands for outcome, situation, choices, action and review. And there are some questions, some effective questions to ask at each stage. Outcome is very much about ensuring that both parties know what they're working on and also know how success will be measured. If you don't know what the success point is, how can you know how to achieve it? Choices and consequences is one particular stage of OSCAR that is the reason why I like the OSCAR coaching model, because it's very much about encouraging the individuals to look at choices. First one being, what's the impact of not making any changes, of carrying on doing what you're doing now? And hopefully the individual will see that's not the best outcome for them, so they can look at other options. The review stage is very much about looking at not just their commitment to making the changes, but as human beings, we tend to fall back into habit-forming behaviour very quickly. So it's important to really identify when that individual goes back to the workplace that, yes, they make some instant changes, but they also identify when they start to slip back and they put steps in place to make sure that they prevent that from happening. Just a little bit on emotional intelligence and a link really between emotional intelligence and coaching. Coaching is about at least two people in that conversation. Both will have emotions. So it's really important as a manager that you're identifying the emotions that the individual is displaying. And that may be through their tone of voice, it may be through their body language, and that you feel confident to empathise and really support those emotions. But as a manager yourself, it's really vital that you manage your own feelings, your own mindset, so that you are in the best frame of mind and the best emotional state to actually coach effectively. So if you're feeling frustrated because your day hasn't been going well, how do you actually manage that so you don't take that into the coaching? So just a few tips. It's about tapping into your emotions throughout the day rather than just hoping for the best as the day continues. So really stopping and thinking about how are you feeling at that moment in time, what's caused it and what can you do to manage it. And there are some useful mood meter apps out there that you can actually download onto your phone or have something on your desk, which just helps you to focus on looking at 3 or 4 times throughout the day, what are you actually feeling? Do you want to stay in that particular state, or do you want to change it? Identifying your triggers. This is about being proactive by recognizing what are the workplace situations that you or your managers find frustrating, or make them anxious, even make them angry. Thinking about it in advance so that you can then put steps in place to consider how you will best manage that situation next time. But also your language and your mind talk affects your feelings. So thinking about your language, are you blaming other people for making you feel frustrated or anxious? It's about taking back control, because if you say somebody has made me feel a certain way, you are giving control to that person. But also a simple tip on managing frustration: if you find yourself thinking or saying out loud, I can't, or it can't be done, try adding the word yet to the end of that sentence and see how differently it makes you feel. It's really important, if you want your team leaders and your managers to feel confident coaching, that they receive coaching training, but also follow-up coaching support. That could be a buddy system. Trust is also an important area for coaching, as well as the relationship between a manager and their team. It's one of the main reasons why people leave a company, is because of the relationship with a manager. The trust equation focuses on credibility. So do people see you as credible as a manager? Do they see you as a reliable person? Intimacy is very much about how well do your team know you as a manager, and how well do you know them? And do they trust you to be open and honest with you? And self-orientation is, do your teams currently believe that you really are focused on them and developing them, or do they believe that you're in it purely for yourself and for your own goals? And finally, just looking at really a final benefit of creating a coaching culture is, in turn, you also create an innovation culture, because people start to identify problems sooner, they start to find solutions, and that's really what innovation is about. It's about training potentially some champions in your business that can become those innovation champions. And one simple tip is I'm very familiar with suggestion boxes in call centres, which can be a great way of getting people to at least think of problems. But the risk with a suggestion box is they offload that problem to somebody else. So if you really want people to not just come to you with problems, they also come with solutions, then potentially a move away from suggestion boxes could help with that. So there's some thoughts really to consider in terms of really, bringing to life a coaching culture within your organisation. Some things to consider to make that happen, as well as developing your coaching skills.
Thank you, Jackie. Some wonderful points on there. I think some quite interesting ones. Particularly the question about why is it that coaching isn't a priority, and I would encourage people to think: is it why is it that email's the priority and coaching isn't? So what do we need to do to change that? To change that mindset, I think would be quite interesting. I think the other question I would ask is: have we trained our team leaders to coach? And that might be the one thing. We put them into a position because they've been good on the phones often, but if we really supported them with everything we need to coach. And I think the other point you made about the asking questions rather than telling method of coaching, I think is so important. I think that's very good. We have had absolutely loads and loads and loads and loads of tips. So if we can't get to yours today, Charlie is going to be writing up all of the tips from today's webinar into an article about how we can make time for coaching and any suggestions for coaching. So let's just have a look at some of the tips come through. Anthony says, we've introduced Super Coach. Super Coach is where my team leader coaches the advisor in the presence of the call center manager, and then the call center manager coaches the team leader on his coaching style. So I think that's
a great one.
Technique there. Charlie says, monitor the coaching time. Make sure all coaching and training is logged, ideally with something like a not ready code on the phone system. Once you understand the time you spend on doing it, you can make sure you set the targets for team leaders. Then once you've made sure it's happening, you can keep your focus on making sure that the time is well used. Dan, that seems sort of quite a good use of technology.
Absolutely. It's one of the points I'm going to be talking about in a moment. It's a really key topic.
So, yeah, technology can really help. Halyanka has said, in the moment coaching is key. You don't need a proper 1 hour session to give feedback. A minute can make a difference too. Certainly if you pick up on a behavior you think was very good, just a quick little thank you can work nicely on that. Jackie Allen has said peer-to-peer coaching can assist with team development. as it shares best practice and can allow staff to identify common trends for coaching and needs across the team and individual. I've certainly seen that being very, very effective.
Yes, I have too.
I guess the big thing is you've got to make sure that the peer is working, because it could also be a way of sharing good practice, but also a way of sharing best practice. You haven't quite got the right people there. Andy says, give a coaching session a score out of 10 in terms of adding value. If you're score at a 1 out of 10, you need to analyze the reason why you're not. So that might be, you know, rather than just giving advisors a score out of 10, give the whole coaching session a score out of 10, which would be quite interesting. Mike, that's the question. Is the general lack of coaching because team leaders and team managers don't know how to do it effectively, Jackie?
I think it's a fundamental reason. It goes back to what I said earlier. If you don't have the confidence in your abilities, then it does tend to not become a priority.
Yeah, I guess that's always a problem. And Amy has said, schedule in no PC days. Team leaders have to be there on their feet with agents, not sat at a PC. So I guess that's one way of dealing with the agents. I suppose you could lock all the PCs in the cupboard on a Friday or something. That becomes coaching day. That's a low-tech solution to it. Amy says, also says, so I think Amy might be wanting this prize. We have a daily 15 to 30-minute buzz session to start the day with our sales team. This time is used flexibly to address challenges, share messages, and can also be used as a team coaching session. Ensures regular and planned sessions with the entire team. And Stephanie says, email or admin time. Plan this into your calendar and stick to it. Where you're disciplined with this, you'll get your coaching and other tasks done. So, Dan, it does
Absolutely.
Dan, it does seem that coaching and scheduling of teams seems to be a trend that seems to work, and I know it's one that you're intending to talk on. So it seems like a good time now to pass the baton across to you. And if you'd like to share your ideas on how you can use technology and how you can schedule time to not be too super busy to coach.
Wonderful, thank you. And thank you, Jackie, for that, for the introduction and for talking us through some of the really valuable tips that we can do to get us all coaching better. One of the things that I'm really interested in is this reason that we start to talk about where we complain of finding it difficult to find the time to deliver coaching. This becomes increasingly complex, particularly as the contact center is changing at such a rate. More and more we're disrupted by new technologies, and as we find no longer we're just doing business over the phone, but we're having to deal with business over web chat and even social media. Finding times and opportunities to coach in all the different ways in which our staff are dealing with customers, it becomes increasingly challenging. And one of the things that I'd like to talk about first is really challenging that idea of being too busy and that idea of it being difficult to find time to deliver coaching. I think we're all here because we realize that coaching is important, and one of the things that came out of the initial conversation question that we had was we realized we want to do some more coaching. Now, technology can help in a variety of different ways, and I suppose some of you may even be sitting here thinking, really, what's coaching got to do with technology? In most businesses that you'll be looking at, you'll have, we'll all be familiar with the kind of concept of workforce management and scheduling. Now, done properly, this is a really important, can play a really important role in coaching and taking coaching forward and helping you regain control of your time. Let's think of something like a really simple scenario, or which might seem quite simple. Actually, deciding to coach somebody is actually quite a difficult decision to make. Not only have you got to identify the reason for the coaching, whether it's opportune or is in response to some negative or positive behavior that we're trying to foster, but we've also then got to consider the implication of taking that time out of the schedule to do the coaching. We may have to arrange coverage. We may have to think about what the impact may be on our service levels. We may have to just grab the person and deal with whatever the consequences might be. Often we treat this as part of our daily shrinkage that we see in our business. Now, workforce management systems are designed to ensure that we can balance really complex variables quite quickly to ensure that we get the right people in the right place at the right time to ensure we meet our service levels. Including coaching in your planning is actually one of the first steps that you can do with technology to start to get control back of your schedule. And this can be a really simple thing. Now, coaching, if it's set up as a separate activity, we plan for it, we put it into our schedules, and we plan for those activities. It's seen as something special, something different from the normal things that we're doing. But with the right tools, coaching can become part and parcel of everyday activities that you're doing. Let's take a look at one quick example. In this example here, I'm looking at the standard process of something like a quality monitoring session. These are often situations where you may come across behaviors or opportunities that lend themselves to coaching. Now, with a tool that's joined up with workforce management, one of the things that we can do quite quickly is we can use the evaluation session or whatever activity we're doing to identify the need for coaching. Because we know who the agent is, in this example, Luke, we also know who the coach is going to be. That information is automatically passed through to a request. Because we started from monitoring a call or reviewing a call, that's already attached as a piece of evidence for us to use. And we can add other attachments if we need to make that session more valuable. We can even choose a template to pre-configure the coaching sessions that we might want to do. By providing some really simple data, such as the description as to why the coaching is needed, and then some parameters like when we'd like it to be done by, or if we need a room, we can then start to think about using that through with our workforce management system to actually pass that request through automatically to the planning team. What this means is that we don't have to plan and consider whether the staff is going to be available or whether it's the right time. The planning team receive the request automatically in real time, and they can then incorporate those requests into their daily planning and ensure that the staff and the coach are scheduled at the right time, where it can have the least impact on the service level. Now, that area of the application that I was looking in not only takes away the guesswork of what the impact might be of doing some coaching now, but it has two major benefits. The first benefit that it gives you is it gives you the ability to have one single location, one single record that contains all of the information past and present about coaching that has been delivered and coaching that is planned. When it's tracked in the workforce management system, it is also the basis of starting to measure coaching and get some accountability for what coaching is taking place, which is the point that Charlie made in his feedback. Is the idea of trying to track and manage the time that we're allocating to coaching. Now, one of the challenges I see quite regularly when I'm dealing with different customers is actually if I ask them how much time is being spent on coaching each week, each month, each year, it can often be really difficult to actually get a handle on that. Not only are we talking about the planned coaching, but all of the ad hoc activities that are taking place. And in reality, it can be very difficult to even get close to an accurate figure on that. And we're quite used to dealing with that discrepancy in our standard concepts of shrinkage. But once we start to incorporate coaching in our standard scheduling activities, we then get the ability to monitor all of that activity that's going on. And as Gartner says, when we start to monitor things, we can start to measure things accurately. Now, this comes to another benefit that technology can bring to coaching. Coaching is an investment in time. It's also an investment in your people. But it can often be difficult to actually justify that expenditure of time in terms of the rewards it's giving you. Coaching is a more subjective return. It's not something you can normally quantify in pounds and pence. Now, that can be a challenge in itself, particularly when we're more and more constricted in terms of what time we have available. Then there's more and more people making demands upon us for time. But once we start to get the information into our systems, then tools like this, where we're looking at, in this example, a scorecard for an individual, and we're looking at the performance measures for the individual across a variety of different metrics. In this example, I'm going to look at the hold activity for Luke again. This is one area that he's being measured on, which is use of hold time in his calls. Now, the reason why I'm looking at this is to try and show you some of the things that can come as benefits of measuring coaching. Not only can we start to quantify the amount of coaching activity that's taking place, but we can also start to consider, when we look at the application, actually whether that coaching is having an impact. In this example, we can see that Luke's trend is down. It's started to pick up. I'm going to start to put the goal line on there so you can see the points where he's dipped below the goal. Now, in a normal activity, we might have decided when he fell below the goal and the trend, even though it's upwards, his performance is low, I'm going to do some coaching. Now, with the coaching information in the system, I can very quickly start to now incorporate coaching indicators in my MI, which means in any MI that I run, I can see directly what the effects are in relation to coaching. I can use this indicator to show me when it was delivered, but also use it as a way of drilling back through from the MI to the coaching to see what actions were described or assigned to Luke to complete as part of that coaching activity. Now, in itself, that seems quite simple, but the idea is that now that you incorporate this concept of coaching, that can now be used to actually quantify the changes that have taken place. Now, in isolation, it's really easy to say that improvement that happened after that coaching session may have been down to hundreds of other factors. It may have nothing to do with the coaching. But because we can visualize this over many, many different users, when we start to see trends where the activities are increasing on a regular basis, that gives us much more confidence that the coaching strategies we're employing are working. But actually, now when I have those conversations about whether my time is well invested, I can actually start to quantify the amount of change that's happened in relation to a coaching activity. And if you imagine that now being put through, for example, an average handle time and a reduction of, say, 10 seconds on the average call through better coaching, that can then be quantified into a direct pounds and pence ROI conversation. So you can actually really start to build good business cases for ramping up and delivering better quality coaching.
And I think that's so important, Dan, that, you know, sort of both measuring the amount of coaching, but also I think the quantification. You know, I've certainly seen people measuring it. I don't often see people quantifying the impact of that coaching. I think, you know, that could be a very, very powerful business tool.
And I think that, I mean, that's a real benefit. So one of the things I see when I'm talking to people is actually trying to ask for more time for coaching. That's always a difficult conversation. There's always other things which will be making demands on your time, and whatever way we look at it, more often than not it will come down to the business case. And if you're unable to quantify it and it becomes guesswork or subjective, those business cases tend to fall to the side. So this is where it can start to add some real value for you. Now, as you start to move forward, I think we're now entering some really exciting times. Now, one of the challenges that we think about with coaching, as we are stretched and we're challenged as managers in the contact center, is actually thinking about how technology can actually help us move forward, to get more effective coaching. Now, this introduces a really interesting concept, the concept of automating the coaching process, but to start with, automating the process of identifying when coaching may be required. Now, this doesn't mean, as Jackie indicated, we're not just coaching the worst performers. We might be coaching the best performers or everybody as day-to-day coaching activities. But one of the problems we face is we can't be everywhere. We don't have the ability to monitor everything. When we're in an organization where we face risk, particularly where we have agents that are in high risk activities, which may be, for example, where they're regulatory controlled or where there's compliance issues involved, one of the things that we can do is we can start using technology to actually police that process, to identify opportunities where coaching needs to be used, or where coaching will have an immediate or the best impact. Now, if I go back into the tool that we looked at a moment ago, in the scenario I described to you, we saw that coaching had been delivered when Luke had got to his low point in his chart. But if we know that that's something we're interested in, why can't technology be used to trigger that automatically? Well, it can. So one of the things that we can look at doing is, in most modern workforce management systems, we can look at building rules that can have predefined criteria to actually determine that coaching may be applicable in this situation. So what I'm doing here is I'm building a rule or a template which is basically going to look at for excessive use of hold activity. Now, this may be driving poor customer experience and maybe resulting in customer issues. So what I'm going to be doing is focusing on that KPI, key performance indicator for hold time. And what the rule is going to be doing for me is I'm going to look at his pattern over the month. And to do that, I'm going to say that where each weekly score is greater than 50% hold, and that happens more than 2 times out of every 4 weeks, I would like to create a coaching session. So when it triggers, I'm going to email the employee and their supervisor automatically. So that's one thing that's going to happen. But the second thing that I'm going to do is automatically create that request for a coaching session. That coaching session will be sent through to the workforce management team in the normal way. So it will get scheduled and appear in their calendars automatically without thinking about it. But when it comes in, it will have all of the information and all of the attachments that help you understand why that coaching is required. You can't be everywhere. but with automated triggers, using them in risk or in different areas, you can at least have the confidence that where coaching needs to be delivered and where it can have an immediate impact on the business, you're not going to miss anything when it comes through. So, 2016 was the year that AI hit mainstream. Most of the people in this call will be familiar with concepts like Siri or Alexa or Google Personal Assistant or any other devices that you're using. We're in really exciting, fast-changing times. And we can now move beyond simple pattern matching. And technology is now beginning to lend itself to more interpretive ways in which it can work with humans. So, with technology changing so rapidly, I'd like to ask this question. Do we think that a computer can be a coach?
So we've put the poll up. Do you think a computer is capable of being a coach? Very simple answer, yes or no. If you'd just like to vote on this, I think this is going to be very fascinating, but based on what has been discussed so far. Do you think a computer is capable of being a coach? Just going to close the size here, and we're going to share the results. This is certainly a surprise for me. Sample size of 165. 53% have said no, but 47% have said yes. Dan, that strikes me more than I would have expected.
Yeah, I was expecting a stronger no response, but that's a pretty balanced response. So it's quite interesting. So it'd be interesting to see whether those opinions change as we move towards the rest of the presentation.
So yeah, I think there's some quite fascinating results there. So half think it will, half think it won't. So it'd be interesting to see how that changes over time.
Okay, thank you. So what we are now looking at is the idea is moving beyond simply matching patterns. With the era of AI, we're now able to start to put some real interpretation into what's happening in a screen. So we can start to actually see what people are saying. And rather than just responding to simple patterns such as X or Y has happened or not happened, we can now start to employ technology to actually say what's starting to happen in a conversation, not only what's being said, but who's saying it and in the context of how it's being said, and then start to use that to provide some coaching. Interestingly, research is telling us that in a situation which is emotionally charged or challenging, and that could be any conversation that your advisors are dealing with on a day-to-day basis, what the research suggests is wherever you go up and give them personal coaching during the call, either you tap in and you barge in or intercept the call and you give them some guidance, you're speaking in the ear or just passing them a bit of paper, or whether the computer is giving them some guidance, the research suggests that actually the impact of that feedback, the impact of the coaching that you might give them, whatever the source, computer or human, is likely to result in the same positive outcome. Whether the feedback comes from a person or from a computer seems to have little impact on the way that the advisor receives the feedback. Now, I think some of this may be down to Generation Z and the millennial generation in terms of the way that they are used to working with technology, but actually it means that computers seem to be able to talk to and provide instruction without any form of detrimental effect in the way that it's working. When we start to think about the idea of real-time analytics, in this example here, I'm looking at some calls and I've analyzed the speech patterns. Now, in this organization, the term new feed is up this month by 49%. So when I look at that, you can see that a lot of the calls are emotional. That's shown by this little yellow icon. The calls are emotionally charged. So I can also see this call I've selected as a lot of emotional content in. I'm going to drill into this call, not because I want to talk to you really about the call, but I want to focus on the area of the right of the screen, which is the advisor's desktop that's been recorded, the ABC Incorporated. Now, I have created a trigger here, which is designed to monitor the conversations, and when the customer side of the conversation, shown in green, talks about closing their account, the system has been configured to provide automatic guidance to the advisor on the next steps or actions. So you can see the little cursor moving through as it's moving through the call and playing. We get to closing my account now, and we're going to see the prompt come up. So the computer is responding to that message, close my account, and it's there prompted the advisor. And you can see what it's saying to the advisor is, this is a platinum customer, offer them a £50 credit. Now that's some pretty simple feedback being provided. I wasn't using it to show you that as a single mechanism. What I was trying to show you is that the technology allows you to actually look at the conversation, look at what's being said, and look at the context of what's being said, and then in real time interpret the conversation and then respond with guidance to the advisor about what action they should perform in an attempt to turn it around. Now, that's the concept of where we are today, but 2017 saw the era of AI progressing with machine learning. This is the idea where machines no longer are just reacting to programming. In the 2017, with machine learning, what computers are able to do is they can have pre-programmed algorithms, but if they don't know the answer, they can actually ask a team of supervisors, the super coach or the manager, deferring that decision off to them to provide the answer, learning by that experience. And next time they encounter the situation that they aren't aware with, they now have the answer, they can respond to it automatically. Over time, the machines become smarter, the machines learn and adapt, and therefore don't have to go off and ask the questions again and again and again. And we're already beginning to see new technology moving into this space. Now, the first generation of machine learning based AI is beginning to come into the market now. Now, the first of these products, Cogito, actually has a product which looks at the conversations and can consider over 200 different measures of conversation and of speech, providing real-time conversational guidance to agents to help them adapt the calls while they're talking to the customers or while they're talking to other parties, with the idea explicitly of changing the outcome of the call. Let me show you an example of this in practice. So as we see there in Jim's call, we saw that as the call is, Jim is speaking to the customer is speaking there, we can actually see the Cogito problem is analyzing the call and actually identifying things like empathy. It's still looking at things like overlap, mimicry, and a whole variety of other characteristics within the call, and providing real-time guidance to the advisor to enable them to respond to and adapt their speech patterns so that they can change and influence the outcome of the call. With technology moving at such a pace, really does raise a question. 2018, what's next?
Wonderful, Dan. Thank you very much for that. I think there's some great pointers that you've got overall in there. Some very interesting tips. I certainly did like the schedule the training during quiet periods, so it doesn't affect service level. I think that was very good. We talked about measuring the amount of coaching, which I think is very powerful, and if you can, the impact on that. And I also like the way that technology can make an immediate impact on feedback. Certainly if you analyze a call a month after it's happened, it's not going to have as much impact as if you can do it immediately after the call, maybe by sending an email, if all your team leads on email, trigger an email to get off email and do a coaching session, or indeed the immediate. I love that you're speaking too quickly or you're talking over the customer. Can just be a pop-up that appears on the screen, and maybe I'm talking too quickly, but would be quite a good way of changing delivery. I'm talking quickly because I'm excited. We've got so many tips to run through. Let's have a look at what's been happening in the chat room. So we've got a number of opinions. Daniel said, as coaching is about asking questions and provoking thought, computers can absolutely help to lead an agent through a process so they can self-assess. If we're talking about emotional intelligence, how could a computer replace an actual coach? Says Daisy. I guess it's all about the artificial intelligence, or could a computer be a coach? And with the right coach, anything is possible. So a range of different opinions there. Dan, let's have a look. Jeffrey says, as an opinion, we try to bring in successful agents to work with other team members as well as ourselves as leads and mentors. We find peer-to-peer coaching and feedback can be very effective and better received. I think that tied in with the comment you had there, Jackie. So here's a couple of tips. We do an awareness session with managers which shows them the differences between feedback and tell and coaching. When it's right to do either activity, the advantages, and explore where there are opportunities to coach. Jackie, you were certainly very keen on asking questions rather than telling people the solution.
Yeah, I think it's important to, as a manager, to recognise that coaching isn't the only, way to manage somebody. So understanding the difference between those, I think, is a great idea.
Excellent. Laura said, we used to struggle with coaching agents due to SLA targets that call centre managers face. We found it difficult to take the agents off the floor to do one-to-one coaching. We completed a trial period where we took agents off the floor to agreed slots during the week for one-to-one coaching, depending on busy trends. By doing this, we found that making time to coach the agents made our work performance better, as it increased our productivity, which meant we reduced callback volumes. Agents became more confident, which resulted in our agents being happier, which improved our staff retention. Yes, the call stats took a hit for around a month, but going forward, it has worked well for us, and we're able to both hit SLA and coach due to consistent coaching. Dan, I think this is a sort of like a manual version of what you were discussing. Presumably, with the technology, you could do it without too much of a hit on the SLAs.
You could definitely do it with some control over the hit on SLA, so you could decide where and when the appropriate time was going to be. But that's a really, really good point that Laura's made there, and it's really nice to see that an investment in coaching may have a short-term cost, but the long-term it will always pay dividends.
Indeed. So a few more tips. One of my team members writes the answer to a new question first and will study the question until she has mastered it. Her knowledge is now a great help in helping our starters. So I guess this is about not necessarily coaching, but in terms of training when you've got a new product or a new solution coming up, trying to identify what could be a good way of answering that question, so that questions become more routine. I like that approach. Leslie said, encourage team leaders to spend time side by side with their agents. It creates an engagement as the team leaders experience some of the challenges, systems, processes that the advisors experience. So I guess this, Jackie, is about doing side-by-side coaching on a live call, which gives that potentially that level of immediate feedback and the opportunity to discuss it after the call.
Absolutely, it's that coaching in the moment, which has huge benefits.
So yeah, I think that's a very, very good one. I like that one. Like that one a lot. Susan says senior agents can take the pressure off team leaders by being trained to be coaches. So I guess that ties in with the overall opinion we had about training our team leaders in coaching. And there is a very good article on Call Center Helper where we looked at how we could train our team leaders well. Temitopi says coaching should be daily and real time as long as there's an opportunity for it. I think we're getting that overall opinion that the closer to the event we can do it, the better. Robert, interesting one here. In my organization, there's a team dedicated to coaching and training, including coaches, trainers, and managers for the coaches and the trainers. So I guess there's split opinions on this, whether team leaders should be coaching or we should have coaches. Jackie, what's your opinion on that?
I have seen both in different organisations. It's a difficult one to give a yes or no answer to because there are advantages and disadvantages, but I think they can add to the coaching scenario, but I still think it's important for managers to undertake coaching as well. It helps to develop and build that relationship between a manager and their team.
Indeed, and we've got one final tip that we're going to go through today before we look at the winning tip. Amy has said, get your agents to nominate a call as best practice that they believe is the best example of a call that can highlight knowledge and understanding while saving time and providing coaching when the agent wants it. Dan, I think call recordings are absolute mine of best practice. And in my views, they're often not shared enough in terms of, that was a good call, or even if it's a web chat.
Yeah, so you're sitting on an absolutely untapped, often untapped set of resources with recordings. And what most people don't realize is with very simple tools, and many of those tools are already provided in the toolkit that you may have, you can highlight, annotate, and add commentary to those call recordings before you share them, to turn them from just a recording into a really dedicated training clip, to highlight best practice and good examples so that people can use that to self-serve and to refer back to. And very few customers actually leverage the full value of their recordings in that way.
So we've now just got time to show the winning tip for today, which is from Paul92. It says, we get so caught up in the term coaching and what it means. Ultimately, coaching is about having great conversations with our people and helping them to understand what they can do to continuously improve. That doesn't always have to be a 1 hour time slot and could be a 5-minute ad hoc conversation. I think, Dan, that ties in very much with your immediate conversation. So we'd like to have our coaching session from you. What did you like best about the webinar? If you could either type that into the chat room or into the form at our survey at the end of the webinar. You can watch the replay a bit later on, callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars, be available in about an hour time. And I'd just like to thank our two speakers for joining us today. Jackie Turner from Turner Corner Learning Solutions, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, John T.
And Dan, thank you for joining us and sharing your insight. Dan Christmas from Sabio, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And we're going to be back same time next week, where we're going to be looking at web chat. So look forward to joining you then. Thank you very much. And